My name is Charley Boorman and I am president of Dyslexia Action, and I'm here to do this our very first live web chat, and it's my first as well, so excuse me for any spelling mistakes or any glitches, but I'll blame the two people either side of me here who are in charge of all the technical stuff. I suppose how it's going to work is I've got some pre-questions which some people have been sending in already, and then as the chat forum and everything gets going, we'll try and start to ask to answer as many of your questions as we possibly can within the next 45 minutes or so. The first question is...
The first question is from a Dyslexia Action student, and it is, what was your best subject at school?
Best subject at school. We were talking about this question earlier, and I don't think I can really say what my best subject was on a live webcam. But in actual fact, bizarrely, I went to a number of different schools, and my father is a film director, and a guy called John Boorman who directed films like Deliverance and Excalibur and Hope and Glory and Emerald Forest and all sorts of stuff. And so we travelled around the world a lot, and so went to lots of different schools. But so when I finally settled in a school when I was 12 until I was 16, in a place called Sipford School, just outside Banbury, which was a Quaker school, and it had a very big dyslexic centre in it, and that's why I went there. So I used to go out for a lot of classes like English and maths, and history, and a few other chemistry and stuff. I used to go out for and have special lessons. But my favourite lessons of all was geography. I absolutely loved it, and I think partly because the teacher was really good. Doc, his name was, I can't remember his proper name now, but he was very good. He was my housemaster as well. I was in boarding school at that stage, so that was my best subject, and bunking off. But anyway, I wouldn't advise that for anybody. And next question.
Sally Mason has a few questions for you.
Yeah.
The first is, did your primary and senior school acknowledge your dyslexia? The second one is,
well, let's do the first one, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, the first one. When I was in school, which was when I was 7, I was very lucky, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in America, in California. So I found out when I was very young. And I got a lot of help when I was in the States, but we lived in Ireland, and I went to school in Ireland, and at the time, and I think not just Ireland, but in England and Scotland and Wales and all the different places, teachers and schools really didn't know very much about it at all, if at all. And so when I came back to school in Ireland, I spent a lot of time trying to explain to people what dyslexia meant, and it was very frustrating because I knew I had it, but a lot of teachers and people at that time didn't know how to diagnose it or what to do with it. So it was quite frustrating when I was young. But nowadays, I think it's much better now. But I think there are still way too many children who are sidelined, and I think that's often what happens in schools. Often a child or someone who's dyslexic like me, often tries to compensate for that when they're young. And maybe can be disruptive or whatever, and because they're not identified with dyslexia, they carry on and then they're sidelined. So it does still happen now, and there's still a lot we can do, and that's why the sort of partnership for literacy that we're involved with here in Dyslexia Action is very important, which brings a sustainable system that can go into primary and secondary schools, that any teachers who are at the school can manage without Dyslexia Action necessarily having to be there, and that it can identify and help children along the way, not just children with dyslexia, but children who are finding it a little bit harder to, or taking a little bit longer to learn to read. So there's a lot that can be done still.
So you kind of answered it already, but do you feel that the education system is doing enough?
I personally don't think that the education system is doing anywhere near enough. I think that we've got this partnership for literacy here, which is ready to go to schools. It's very cheap, it's very affordable, and it's very effective. And the government and boroughs and schools and bursaries and all these different people are not taking it seriously enough. And I think part of it is because dyslexia is a hidden disability. So if you're standing in front of the headmaster and one kid has broken his wrist and he says, I can't play games, he can certainly understand that. But you look at another kid who's saying, I can't read, and you look at him, there's no physical, there's nothing physically wrong with you. It's much harder to understand. So I think we have a long way to go. I think we've come an unbelievable long way since from when I was a kid. But we can still go much, much further, and we have the systems in place. God, that was very long-winded and waffly, wasn't it? Sorry about that.
Lucy McNally asks, who would you nominate for an It's Me Choice Award?
Who would I nominate? I've been involved with Dyslexia Action now for, I think this is my 3rd year, and the gala dinner in November is a very special time for us, and we can nominate all sorts of different people who have done fantastic stuff who are dyslexic. I think one of the people that I would nominate is a guy called Ross Noble, who's a comedian, the guy with the long dreads, and very, very funny guy, and big motorbike fan like I am, and he's done a TV show about riding around Australia on a motorbike from all his gigs, and we went out to Africa together, and we just came back recently from Afghanistan together. We went out and entertained the troops, and we spent 10 days in Afghanistan together, in Kandahar and Camp Bastion, and I think we spoke to a couple of thousand soldiers each night for 4 nights, and we met all sorts of different people, and it was incredible what the guys are doing out there. Regardless of what we think about the war, the boys out there are doing the most amazing stuff. So I would nominate Ross Noble for his humanitarian abilities and his unbelievable ability to be able to ride a bike, and he's a good mate, and he deserves the award.
Victoria
I think I've just got a text from him.
Victoria Reid asks,
he said I'm a much better motorbike rider than you are, which is not true. So anyway, there we go.
Victoria Reid asks, what scares you and how do you overcome your fear?
What scares me? I suppose. I suppose in the kind of work that I do, it's freelance, and so my work is off and on all the time, and so there's no real job security with that. So that scares me, not being able to pay the bills, which scares all of us. The other thing that scares me is heights. I'm not that big a fan of heights, although I do quite like standing beside the edge of a building. I quite like the feeling of being scared of that. Is that weird?
No,
I don't know.
Ridiculously scared of heights.
But I quite like that, and I don't mind jumping off buildings and stuff, but I am scared of heights. So that scares me. And really bizarre food. I don't know if any of you have seen some of my TV shows, but I have eaten everything from sheep's testicles to squirrel to snake to turtle to all sorts of stuff. That just travelling around the world, you kind of sort of get yourself in these situations, and I always believe you've got to give everything a go once. So anyway, those are the things that scare me.
Okay, Eunice Unicorn.
Eunice Unicorn. Fantastic.
Were your parents supportive before your diagnosis, and how old were you when you found out about your dyslexia?
I think I wasn't listening. Sorry, what was the question?
The question was Eunice
Very
Unicorn.
dyslexic thing to do.
Eunice Unicorn
Yeah.
asks, were your parents supportive before your diagnosis, and how old were you when you first found out you were dyslexic?
I kind of answered that a little bit before, but I was found out when I was about 7, and I think if you're unsure about your children, and if they are or not dyslexic, about 7 years old is about the right time to come. You can come onto Dyslexia Action website and get some information about how to help your kid. But I think my parents kind of knew there was something wrong, and I have a twin sister, Daisy, and my 2 older sisters, Tasha and Katrina, and and they could all read, and so I think my father kind of knew that. My father used to mirror write when he was a kid, and his teacher used to correct his homework using a mirror, and so I think Dad kind of had an idea of spelling and a little bit of difficulties. So I was very young, and they were incredibly supportive, my parents. My father spent endless hours and hours and hours helping me to read and going over learning to spell words again and again and again. I don't know if anybody's tried to help a dyslexic person to learn how to spell a word, but they can get the word one day and the next day completely forget how to spell it again. So it can be very frustrating and you have to be incredibly patient to teach dyslexic people.
We have a few now about parenting. Jennifer asks, what is the greatest thing that your parents did for you when you were a child to help you deal with your dyslexia?
I suppose my parents, the support my parents gave me as I was a kid was 100% really, and they were always supportive through everything, and incredibly patient with me, and I think that's how they kind of did it. And they always, I just grew up with the feeling of never really thinking that dyslexia was a problem really, and I think that's very much to do with how my parents brought me up. And I think my father, when I was very young, my father put me in a lot of his movies, and I think that was because it was for me it was a very enjoyable way of being able to express myself, whereas I couldn't express myself on paper. So when I got up and I started acting, that's what I originally started doing. That's when I learned to express myself, and that was my thing, was to communicate in this form, I suppose.
Tanya Jane Phillips asks, what advice do you have for parents of a dyslexic child?
A dyslexic patience. Lots of patience, but I think one of the things that you can do is to come to a place like Dyslexia Action, have your child diagnosed, and get your children to meet other dyslexic children, because through talking with them and stuff, you'll find out that dyslexic people have lots and lots in common with each other. We're very forgetful. Our attention span is quite short. Our ability to be able to put things in order and are very difficult. And our mind, I don't know, when you speak to a dyslexic person, with me, my conversation flits all over the place. So I find it very difficult to keep on the same topic of conversation, which infuriates my wife and children as we sit at the dinner table and I'm asking questions about all sorts of different things. So little things like that before I spoke to other dyslexic kids, I thought that I was alone in that, and that my forgetfulness and my disability to be able to remember things, and I'd get distracted so easily. My parents, I remember once when I was a kid, I was playing in a quarry just outside our house in Ireland, and I went with this other kid, and he got stuck on the cliff. We were climbing the cliff, and he couldn't get down, and so I ran home to get help. And halfway home, I got sidetracked and forgot all about him. And it was only when I wandered up to the house, and my father asked me, "Where's your friend?" And I went, "Oh gosh, he's back at the quarry and he's stuck." And that must have been about an hour before. And so we went running back to the quarry, and he'd already got himself down and was sort of walking home crying, saying, "You forgot all about me." And anyway, yeah. So it was when I met other dyslexic people that I realised that that all those are quite common.
We have a question from Kaylee Reed. She says, "Where's your favourite place in the world?"
My favourite place in the world? I think it's a difficult one, because I've been to a few places. I suppose when I did Long Way Round, the first thing I did with a guy called Ewan McGregor, and we travelled on motorbikes around the world, and we ended up in a place called Mongolia, which was one of the most incredible places I think I've ever been to, and I was a very reluctant camper. I'm not a very good camper, or I wasn't when I first started. I love it now, and I do remember sort of one of the first few times we were camping. We were at the beginning of Mongolia, and it was really tricky place to camp, but I do remember putting up my tent, and we were by this lake, and there was this huge lake was out in front of us, and on the other side of the lake there was must have been about 20 or 30 wild horses were sort of trotting across, and the light was all pink bouncing off the lake, and it was one of those moments where you just think, my gosh, this is incredible, and that we rode here. That was kind of cool. I loved Mongolia. It was very difficult, very hard, but lots of drama, and it was a really tough place to get across. So yeah, it had a bit of everything, which I loved.
Next question is from a Dyslexia Action student.
Oh yeah.
Were you ever bullied at school?
Was I ever bullied at school? Yeah, a little bit, I suppose. I was always caught a bit, because people didn't understand that I had dyslexia and that I couldn't really read properly or spell properly. Kind of kids, definitely, occasionally said some not very nice things, and I remember feeling a little bit upset sometimes, definitely, but I had a very tough twin sister who used to go around beating up anybody who said bad things about me. So thank you, Daisy, for looking after me so much. But it was hard. But my parents always taught me to be, strong and say that you're better than everyone else. So and I believe them. I still do. No, it's a joke. But anyway, a little bit, and it's not very nice. It really isn't. And I suppose if you do get bullied, you've got to identify the person and make sure that everybody knows that person is bullying you. And the more people who know about it, the harder it is for that person to bully you.
Kelly Weatherly asks, has your dyslexia ever stopped you from doing something that you want to do?
I suppose it's not really. I think it just takes a little bit longer to do it. I think one of the fun things about dyslexic people is that because you become so creative, trying to sort of think outside the box when you're in school, to sort of make up excuses why you didn't finish your homework, or if you were trying to write something down, you couldn't spell the word, you'd have to sort of write around those words and all sorts of stuff. So that I think that you definitely start. I remember when I first left school and I had the checkbook, and I remember going into shops to like Sainsbury's or Tesco's or somewhere like that, and I'd have to write I'd have to write out a check, and then I would ask them how to spell that shop, and they would look at you kind of strangely. So your mind would work really quickly trying to identify anything with that shop's name written on it, so you could write that checkout and stuff. And now they have chip and pin, which is fantastic. So you don't have to write anything. But I think it makes you dyslexia makes you think differently to other people, and I think that bodes very well in business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurial people are dyslexic. The big classic example is Richard Branson, and Einstein was dyslexic, and Theo, who's a big supporter of Dyslexia Action from Dragon's Den, he's dyslexic, and it's never stopped any of them, and it's certainly never stopped me. I've written 5 books now. So yeah, I don't think anyone thought I'd do that. So no, so not really.
Sarah Spindler asks, if you think you're dyslexic, how do you go about getting diagnosed?
If you think you're dyslexic, you can. Well, one of the easiest ways to go is to go onto our website, dyslexiaaction.org, isn't it? Yeah, sorry. It's funny, I'm president of Dyslexia Action and I can't spell any of those words. It's dyslexiaaction.org, and then the website will then show you there. And we have lots of centres all over the country where you can go and get tested. I mean, sadly, one of the big things, and what we're trying to raise money for all the time, is to try and help people as much as possible to get diagnosed, and it is quite a costly thing to do. So if you're a mature student, it's much more difficult to it can be quite difficult to find it free, but you can get a half-hour session in a consultation. You can get a half-hour consultation for free in the different places around the country, so at least that gives you a start. And if you have kids, or if you're a kid, then you should go to your school, and your school all schools should be able to help you and certainly have you diagnosed. So to find out what type of dyslexia there are. And there's loads and loads of different types of dyslexia. There's dyspraxic, where you're with numbers, that you find it really difficult. You can have really mild dyslexia, so when you're driving down the road and someone says turn right, you turn left. You can just have a little bit of spelling, where you just get some words back and forward, or you can have it really, really badly and be really hard. I've got it somewhere sort of in the middle. My spelling is atrocious. I write stuff down and can't even, go back a day later and have no idea what I've written. My computer just says that that's wrong, and it's so badly spelt that it doesn't even have an option half the time. But there are lots of ways of doing it. So dyslexiaaction.org, you go to your school and get your parents to talk to the teachers. You can go to our centres around the country, which is all on the website, and so those are a few other options.
Cameron Faulkner asks, what has been your best trip up until now?
My best trip up until now, God, it's difficult, because they're all pretty good. I think I haven't got one best trip. I think all of them have their moments, and the first one was Mongolia and the Road of Bones in Far East Russia. When I did a race called the Dakar Rally, which is one of the toughest races in the world, and that's a 16 race at 800 kilometres a day through the Sahara Desert. It's a bit like riding on a motorbike from London to Edinburgh every day off-road for 16 days. And I only managed 5 days and fell off and broke my hands. And but that was amazing. I loved that whole thing. It was really, really hard, and mentally really hard. Long way down, when you and I went down through Africa, I loved Ethiopia, and Sudan was incredible, and Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda and all those places. Rwanda was an amazing place. Met the president of Rwanda, and it was quite funny because we met him at a wedding, and we were quite badly dressed because you don't have many clothes when you're traveling, and so he invited us to have tea with him the next day on Sunday. This is the president of Rwanda, and so we all panicked, and so we rushed out to a shop, and we all bought suits to look smart when we went to go and see the president. And we went to his house, beautiful house, and we were waiting for him on the terrace, and it was a hot day, and we were in suits and dressed up really well. And then he came downstairs in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. So we all looked at each other, and he got dressed in a jeans and t-shirt, thinking that, because we didn't have the right clothes, and we panicked and put suits on, so we all of us looked like idiots. But he was a very, very nice man.
Simon Gallagher asks, what's the most embarrassing situation that you've been put in due to your dyslexia?
Oh, the most embarrassing... I suppose the most embarrassing situation is I'd say one of the most embarrassing ones, and it can be really tricky when I do book signings, and I go around the world and I do book signings around the world, and I sit there and I have to ask everybody how to spell their name, and sometimes people get a little bit, go, oh well, it's just like Evelyn, it's just spelt like Evan, and I'm going, yeah, but I just don't know how to spell Evelyn, and so sometimes I can get a little bit embarrassed doing that. Those are kind of embarrassing. But other than that, if I'm in an embarrassing situation, I just blame my parents. So, it's always a good one. You just say, oh, I got that wrong, I blame my parents. No, that's what I do most of the time.
Nikki Knight asks, do your children or any of your family members have dyslexia?
Do my other members of the family have dyslexia? Yeah, I think my twin sister has a little bit of dyslexia, but she kind of grew out of it. If that's a good. My father used to write mirror writing, so there is a little bit. Definitely, it's definitely hereditary. It definitely, and I think it passes pretty equally through girls and boys. A lot of people thought that it was just more boys and girls, but it's pretty equal.
Andrew Hyde asks, would you class yourself as an adventurer, an actor, or a campaigner?
Andrew, wow. Neither. I don't know. I quite like the idea of an adventurer. That sounds quite nice. But I think primarily, I'm an actor, really. And I started off as an actor. I think the first film I was in, I was 3 years old, was the first film I was in. And it was my father made a film called Deliverance. And I wouldn't suggest watching it if you were under 18, but it was quite scary. But my father promised me a tricycle if I'd sit on the sofa. So I sat on the sofa, and there was this red tricycle by the camera. And he said, you can have that if you stay there. So I stayed there, and I looked up, and I looked at this some bloke who was on the sofa with me, and that bloke turned out to be John Voight. And I got my tricycle, and I don't think my father quite realised that tricycle was actually the whole start of my love affair with motorcycles. And so I blame my father for my motorbike love.
Alex Lebrit asks, if you could give your 12-year-old self one bit of advice, what would it be?
One bit of advice. Oh yeah, no regrets. Just if you have an idea or want to do it, just go and do it. I think the one thing I would hate, as I got older, to have regretted not doing something. And I think if you've got a passion to go out and travel, if you want to go and do a road trip, if you want to go and do whatever it is that you want to go and do, you should just don't let anybody stop you doing it. And because I would hate for anybody to be much older and think, oh, I wish I'd done that. So I think no regrets would be the one. And there was a roller coaster ride that I did in Six Flags Magic Mountain in Los Angeles that I chickened out of, and I should have done it, and I regret it. So yeah. So if you're in a roller coaster park and you're thinking, shouldn't I, do it, because you'll only regret it.
Stephen Sands asks, when you're learning a script for TV or film, do you have trouble remembering your lines?
I do, actually. I do. When I get a script it takes days and days. Ewan is incredible. Ewan McGregor, he'll get a piece of text or dialogue, he'll look at it, and within a couple of minutes he's learnt it. And what he takes in a couple of minutes takes me a couple of days to learn it. And I get stressy about it. I get, at the beginning of each film that I do, I often get I wake up with a terrible neck ache, and like I've got a crick neck, and it's all to do with stress, and it's just so much stress. But once you're on the set and you do start acting and with other people and stuff like that, it's great, and you forget all the hard work. But I think all things that you do in life are all it's all about hard work, and if you're dyslexic, then you just have to work twice as hard as everyone else, and if you want to be successful in anything you do, you got to work really, really, really hard. And I've tried to not work, and it doesn't work. So yeah. Anyway, there we go.
Action Work asks, has dyslexia affected your sense of identity?
Has dyslexia my sense of identity? No, I don't think so. I think it's made me who I am. I'm very proud to be dyslexic, and I'm very proud that I think differently to other people, and I'm very proud of all the other dyslexic people who've done fantastic stuff, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It can be frustrating at times, but even if you're not dyslexic, everybody has problems, and everybody has their thing that they can and can't do, and it's just a matter of finding what you want to do, and go and do it. But I'm very proud to be dyslexic, and I think anybody who's dyslexic should be proud and should speak openly about it.
Andrew is planning on rowing across the Atlantic and would like to know how, when you're planning your trips, you remember to pack everything that you need.
Gosh, I think Andrew, well done if you're going to do it. I mean, it's tough. And I know Ben Fogel is a great mate of mine, and he rowed across the Atlantic with Cracknell, and they had an incredible time. And he speaks, at the time I think he thought it was quite hard, but looking back, he really enjoyed it. I think if you forgot something, I think that would really be. It's not as if there's a shop in the middle of the Atlantic, but yeah, it is important to get a checklist of the stuff that you need to take with you, and you always take more than you need, and it only comes from sort of practice and doing it a few times that you realise you only need a few pairs of trousers and a couple of t-shirts and a couple of jumpers, and that's about it really. You don't actually need that much, and that's the kind of fun thing about travelling, and doing the kind of travel that I do in kind of odd places. Is that you really do go back to basics, and often halfway through I remember halfway through you and I, when we did Long Way Round, the first one, about halfway through the trip we just realised that we were just carrying way too much stuff, and our bikes were getting cracks on the frames, and because there was just so much weight on the back, and we opened up our panniers and we went through the stuff that we weren't using, and it was all on the bottom of our panniers, which are the boxes on the back of our motorbike. And there was just loads of stuff, and we had between two of us, we had 2 full toolkits when you only need one, because we were always together, and there was so much stuff that we doubled up on, so we just got rid of half the stuff, and it was so much nicer. But you don't really know what not to take until you've done it, if you see what I mean. But listen, good luck with that, it's a big thing to do, and it'll be something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. I think we all need to do something adventurous at some stage.
Yolanda Stanbury asks, where can adults get free help or classes that will help them with their dyslexia?
Okay, free class and stuff it can be quite difficult. I think that depending on your age, if you're in school, then you should take full advantage of everything that they offer there. Even if you think you have a little bit of dyslexia, then you should get your parents to have a chat with the school, and you get extra time in when you do your exams if you're dyslexic. So that extra 20 minutes you can go back over the paper and make sure that you haven't made any silly mistakes. It's a very common thing for a dyslexic person to do, is to panic a little bit and shoot through, and you miss things, or you misspell them, or you misinterpret them. So use that extra 20 minutes to really check your exams, but again, go on to dyslexiaaction.org, and there's a lot of information there, and there's a lot of centres all around the country who can help you and certainly steer you in the right direction.
Shez Jones asks, is there anywhere in the world that you haven't been that you would like to go?
Oh my gosh, is there anywhere in the world where I've been and would like to go? I mean, there are tons and tons of places. I mean, pretty much all of South America I haven't done yet, and I would absolutely love to go there. And there's loads of Africa, loads of India that I've not done. There's a whole ton of places. So there's plenty of places that I still want to go. I think my next trip, I'm doing some work for the BBC in about 3 weeks' time, where I'm going to Alaska to go on the most dangerous roads with Sue Perkins, Sue and I in a car in the ice, freezing cold, and then after that in February of next year I'm doing this massive adventure, which is online adventure. So the first sort of purely live online adventure I think that's been done, and it'll go from North America down through South America. and it'll be all interactive, and we're going to get Twitter and Facebook, and then we're going to run a competition so that people can come and join me onto the TV show, and get people to find out where we can stay with people along the way, and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully be completely interactive. So that's what's coming up next.
Kay Dane asks, do you know any celebrities who are dyslexic, and could you convince them to support Dyslexia Action?
Yes, I do know lots of dyslexic people, and lots of people do. Kenny Logan, who has recently come on board with us, and who is a fantastic guy. He played for Scotland, rugby for Scotland, and an international rugby player. Amazing man, incredible story he has about how he sort of finally came to terms with his dyslexia. And he was quite old when he finally admitted he couldn't read. I'd love to get Jamie Oliver, has a little bit of dyslexia. I'd love to get him involved. So if anybody knows him out there, let us know. There's a whole ton of people I'd love. I'd love Richard Branson to come along. There's a whole ton of people who I'd like to come along.
Dave Eastow asks, if you could invite 6 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Oh, Dave, it's a really difficult question, that. It's really hard. I can't believe that you've asked that. Well, it's difficult. I was just thinking about this, and I've written down a bunch of people here, and I think one of the first people I'd love to have dinner with is a guy called Barry Sheen, and he was a MotoGP rider, and he was a very famous sort of celebrity in this country as well, and he was the real essence of what motor racing sport kind of should be, really, kind of a bit rock and roll and a bit man. He was an amazing talent, and so I'd love to have dinner with him. He died of cancer, actually, and then Farrah Fawcett Majors, because I had a poster on the wall when I was a kid. I'd like to chat to her. Valentino Rossi, he's another MotoGP rider. He's 9 times world champion, amazing guy. Che Guevara, I'd love to have dinner with. I'd love to know how he became this guy and then suddenly became this extraordinary kind of person. I'd love to have a meet with him. And then Nelson Mandela, I'd really love to have a chat with him and find out how, he was such a patient, forgiving man, incredibly forgiving man. And then Elvis Presley, because I quite like his music, and I want to know, is he really on the moon, and or not? And then maybe as a 7th, maybe get the Japanese Prime Minister and ask why he's not doing enough for his people out there who are still struggling for shelter and food. That's who I would have. Who would you have? If you're listening, send one back and tell us who you'd like. That'd be nice. And anyone else has got any ideas, and send them back. Let us know who they'd like to have dinner with. That'd be kind of cool. I'd be interested to hear who you have.
Richard Ryan asks, when you did Long Way Round, did you learn any Russian or the Cyrillic alphabet?
Yeah, well, I think I can barely use the English alphabet, let alone the Russian alphabet, which is like totally different. It's a bit like Japanese. Actually, one guy told me it was a brilliant description of what it must be like what it's like to be dyslexic. And he was about 45 years old when he was finally found by Dyslexia Action, and he'd been to prison many times. He was living in a car. He was an alcoholic. Terrible life he had, and Dyslexia Action found him and helped him to learn to read. And he wasn't actually I don't think he even was dyslexic. He just was illiterate, and he learned to read. And he said it opened up the world. And he said, do you know what it was like? It was like being dyslexic is like if you go to Japan and you walk down the street and everything on the street is in Japanese, and you just have no idea what the signposts say, what's in the shops, or anything. You pick up a newspaper and there's just absolutely nothing you can identify with. So what was the question?
The question was, did you learn any Russian?
Oh yes, Russian.
Cyrillic alphabet?
Anyway, I don't know why that was another dyslexic thing. I blame my parents. But yes, we did. We didn't learn very much. You and I, we had quite a number of Russian lessons when we were just before we went off on long way around, and we weren't very good in them and stuff. But we did learn a few things like, hello and goodbye and thank you and all those kind of stuff. And for the first sort of 2 or 3 weeks that we were there, we both kept sort of waving our hands and saying the word chitiri. And we'd sort of say, if people passed or drive past, we'd say chitiri. And you'd buy something, you'd say chitiri, saying thank you. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks into Russia that person came up to you and I and said, "Why are you saying for to everybody?" And so we spent the first 2 weeks saying chitiri, which was actually for. So when people went past, we'd go chitiri, and they'd sort of look at you very strangely, thinking we were saying hello, but we're actually saying for. So yeah, but it's tough language, Russian, tough language.
Cliff Kafka also asks, if you were offered the chance to do Dakar on 4 wheels, would you?
Oh yeah, Dakar on 4 wheels. I don't know. I think it's difficult because I didn't finish it on 2, and I think if I went back, I would have to do it. I think probably again on 2, but I would love to do it on 4. I was in Dubai last week for the Dubai Literary Festival, and I don't know if any of you have read any of the Artemis Fowl books, but Owen Colfer I met him. He was a peer of mine. I read all those books, and we went out while we were there. We went out into the desert, and we had a fantastic time on a couple of buggies, and that was good fun. And I did think, I could, this little 2-seater buggy, I could potentially go on. So yeah, if someone offered me the ride, I'd go, absolutely. But I'd like to do it on a bike.
Linda asks, how important is writing for you now?
Writing for me is very important, and it's a very important part of all the TV shows that I do to bring out the book as well. It's quite complicated for me to write the books. I have a guy called Jeff Galvin who helps me write the books. We work in sort of partnership together, and so in that way I can be as expressive as I want to be. And I think being dyslexic is all about hooking yourself up with the right people and the right partners to help you along your way. And Jeff is an amazing man, and he works very well and very closely with me on all the books.
Layla Eldridge asks, are you dyslexic?
Am I dyslexic? I'm a dyslexic.
Are you artistic? Do you draw, paint, or are you musical?
I'm neither artistic or musical, to be honest. I remember when I was a kid, I used to play the drums, and I would for 3 terms, I think it was, or 4 terms, I was playing the drums. And eventually my drum teacher said to me, "Do you know, Charlie," he said, "listen," I said, "you make a nice little thing, but he said, to be honest, I think you're wasting your mother's money." Can you imagine? I was so upset. But I was pretty hopeless at it. But I suppose I'm artistic in the way of the documentaries that I make, and the choice of the movies that I choose, and the way that the look and the feel of the TV shows, and the credits, and the choice of music and all that kind of stuff. I'm very much a big part of that, and I suppose creatively, that's where I come along. Is for me, it's all about visual things, and about visually how a TV show will look, or if someone explains to me, like, you need to go up to the West End to Dean Street, and I can't picture where Dean Street is, but if I say, is that the one with the McDonald's on the corner, and you go up and the theatre's on the right hand side, and so that's visually how I work, and most people go, "I don't know if there's a McDonald's there," or "I have no idea if the theatre's there." So that's usually no help either to get to the. But for me, that's how I get around London. For me, it's all about visual, for me, and so I suppose maybe that's where my artistic bit is, I think. Yeah.
Emma Anderson asks, do you ever get frustrated with being dyslexic?
Do I, I get frustrated definitely sometimes. I think the thing I get really frustrated about is when I'm texting or emailing people, and I watch people. I watch my wife or my kids or my friends emailing and texting or emailing. They're just sitting on the computer and they're looking at the screen and they're touch typing, and whatever they're thinking is just flowing onto paper or onto the screen. And I find that really hard. I'm very jealous of people that can do that, to be able to express themselves. And if I'm trying to just write a quick note to somebody, or I'm trying to do something, I find it really hard. And I make a sentence, I get to a point, to a word that I can't spell, so then I have to delete the whole sentence and then write a whole other sentence, or maybe two sentences, just to explain that one word. So yeah, in that bit, I find it very, very, very difficult. And if I'm watching a foreign movie with subtitles, and if the subtitles run too quickly, then I get terribly frustrated because I can't keep up with what's going on.
Helena Engel says, in response to your question, she'd love to have dinner with you.
Oh, that's very kind. Wow.
Dave asks, do you have any more plans to go riding with Ewan?
I do have lots of plans with Ewan. I mean, Ewan is, making these big movies now and stuff, and he's always been making big movies, but he's really busy. He's been busy the last couple of years, and they've just had another baby girl, so just recently. So he's very busy being a father for the fourth time, and it's another little girl, and she's gorgeous. But I'm only 44, and Ewan's a few years younger than me, and we've got plenty of time. So we've always spoken about doing a third one together, but exactly when we'll do it in the next few years, just not sure. But it's definitely on the cards. It's just a matter of when.
Shez asks, in your travels, what is the weirdest thing that you've had to eat?
Shez, the weird thing. I've lots of weird things, and in lots of weird places as well. I think one of the weirdest ones was I had bat soup and little fruit bats, and you have this sort of stew, and you use the bat wing as a spoon, and you eat it. That was pretty horrible, and they have lots of tiny little bones, and that wasn't very nice. But it's a real delicacy in Indonesia, in a certain part of Indonesia, yeah. And that was when I had a bit of dog meat as well. That was awful. That was really not very nice. But, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I got tremendously ill after the dog food. Meat. Yeah.
Roy asks, and says, you have a very good memory. Is this because you're dyslexic?
Oh, I have a really bad memory, I think. Certain things I can remember, like useless pieces of information I can remember, that do mean nothing to anybody. And I can remember those. I can remember, bizarrely, I can remember, like if I go to someone's house, like we drive to the countryside and I go to someone's house, forever I'll be able to go back to that place. I'll never forget how to get to that house, for some reason. I play a little bit of golf, and I can just about remember almost every single golf hole that I've ever played. Or if someone says, what about that golf course? And if I'm just prompted a tiny bit, I can remember just about every hole. It's bizarre things. I can look at a motorbike, and as the motorbike comes towards me, I can usually tell what make and model it is. That's a bit sad. A bit like it. Anyway, but yeah, or the ways I can tell. Yeah. So yeah, but the really important stuff like having to be at my accountant's at 2:00, or having to be at some meeting somewhere. The amount of times I've just forgotten the appointment. Yeah, never forgotten a track day or a motorcycle race ever. So I suppose it's what really interests you, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway. Roll it, Alexis. Okay.
If you were on a desert island and could only take one bike with you, which bike would it be?
Oh no, you can't. I'm not sure if I could just take one bike. What type of island would it be? Would it be like sand or hard-packed earth, or will there be roads on it, dirt, tarmac? If it had a bit of sand, a bit of hard-packed, and a bit of tarmac on the island, then I would take my BMW Adventurer. If it just had sand, I would take my little 400 motocross bike. And if it just had tarmac, I would take a sports bike. Yes, it would have to depend on the conditions.
A staff member at Dyslexia Action asked, how do you think your dyslexia affected your trips?
I get terribly frustrated filling in the forms to go to another country. I find that really difficult. And I usually try and get Billy Ward, who travels with me sometimes, when I do these African motorcycle tours up through Africa in August and September. I hate filling out any kind of form. I hate filling out on the border. I get really frustrated and really impatient. But that's about the only thing. And funny enough, when you go travelling like this, tent pegs, you always seem to lose tent pegs by the end of a trip. I've only ever got you need at least 6 or 7, and you always end up with only 1 or 2 left, and I'm using bits of twigs, and I've even used my pen at some stage to keep the pen up, to keep the tent up. So I don't know why tent pegs go missing, but they do. It's a phenomenon. I blame my parents again, as usual.
Julie Brown-Fenn asked, have you ever done a martial art?
Have I ever done? No, I've never done martial arts. I was always, as a kid, I was always riding around on dirt bikes or riding horses. That was my big thing when I was a kid. So that kind of consumed my whole life. No, I never have. I'd like to give it a go.
Martin McKay asks, what kind of mobile phone do you use, and do you think it's dyslexia friendly?
The mobile phone I use is I have an Apple phone, an iPhone, and I think it's fantastic for dyslexic people. I think it has a very good spell check. I've got an app that is brilliant called Dragon Dictate, and you can download it for free, and you, as long as you're on 3G or on the internet, you can dictate whatever you want to say, and it puts everything into words, and then from there you can send it as an email or a text message or it's a Twitter or as anything you want. That's the most brilliant bit of kit that I've got, and then of course the games. I've got a very good helicopter game that I'm obsessed about at the moment. That's very good, and So I think the iPhone for me is fantastic.
Julia Mack asks, she finds that she's worse with numbers.
Uh-huh.
Does this sound similar to your dyslexia, or are you worse with words?
I'm not so bad with numbers, so I can do all that kind of stuff. When it comes to really technical mathematics, I'm not very good at that at all. But I'm much more with spelling and reading and stuff. But I over the years, I've forced myself and learned to read much more. I can. Funny enough, bizarrely, I don't know if it's with you guys, and maybe one of you might want to answer back. But when I read to myself, I can read much better. The minute I read out loud, I can't do it at all, and I get everything wrong. My children, doing Kinvara, they're 13 and 15 now, and they by the time they were 6 and 7, I would sit and maybe read a book with them, and they'd go, "Oh no, Daddy, don't you read a book? Get Mum to do it," because they could read better than I could out loud. But I can read better when I read to myself. I don't know if that's common, but
Bethan says, "You're my hero. Who is yours?"
You are my hero. Heroes. My wife is my hero, and my 2 girls, Dune and Kinvara. I think my wife, because she puts up with me and she holds the fort when I travel. I'm away for maybe 6 months of the year, and any idea or anything that I ever do, is run by her first, and she has a great sense of what she thinks is a good idea or not, and I value her opinion incredibly highly over anybody else. And then my dad, because he tells it how it is.
Kim Dixon says, have you ever rode through Wetwang?
Wetwang?
It's a well-known bike route in East Yorkshire.
I don't think so. No, I haven't. But go on Twitter and show me give me the link to the road if there is one, and I'd love to go and do it. A great Yorkshire friend of mine told me this very funny story once, nothing to do with your route, but an old guy, and he used to have a motorcycle and a sidecar all his life. He drove a sidecar, and for some reason when he was about 78 years old, he decided that he would get rid of the sidecar and just ride the motorbike. And so he got rid of the sidecar, rode his motorbike, and he was going around all the roads up in Yorkshire, and fantastic roads. And he came to a traffic light, and as he came to the traffic light, and he stopped, and he just fell over, and he'd forgotten that he'd taken his side stand off, so he didn't bother putting his feet down. So I don't know if that has anything to do with that, but I haven't. But I would love to go.
We have another message from Andrew's Atlantic Challenge.
Oh yeah.
He asks, do you think you would be able to record me a really quick video wishing me luck for my solo Atlantic row? Okay, and he's watching now, is he? Okay, if you're watching now and if you're recording, I don't know if you can record this, but we'll give it a go. Listen, I would just like to say that I think what you're doing, rowing across the Atlantic, is the most amazing thing and the most incredible challenge, and will be one of the best experiences of your life. And I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope that you don't get any saddle sores or any blisters on your hands, and keep your fresh water safe. How's that? Helen Howard, and this is the last question.
Oh, okay. Already? Wow.
Has dyslexia ever affected your confidence when you've been on a trip?
I must say that dyslexia has, never even enters my mind when I'm on a trip, and it's all about communication. It's all about meeting people and all that kind of stuff. And usually, when you're in a foreign country, you can't read the menu anyway, so everybody's in the same boat. So no, it doesn't. But dyslexia never really interferes with anything that I do. So I can always find a way around it if there's going to be a potential problem. But it's as I said before, I'm very, very proud to be dyslexic, and I'm very proud to be part of Dyslexia Action, and that I think what we all do here, and all the people and the girls here tonight who have been helping with this webcast, and everybody else at Dyslexia Action, have done the most amazing job over the years and have helped so many people, and not just young kids, but people who are older, who have always struggled to read. So it's a great team to be part of, and so I'd just like to take this opportunity to say thank you all very much for coming in on the web chat, our first one. And to everybody at Dyslexia Action for everything all over the country, for what they do for kids and for grown-ups around Britain and Ireland. So thank you very much.
We'd like to say thank you to you, Charlie, and sorry that we didn't have time to ask everybody's questions.
Yes, I'm absolutely, and we're sorry we couldn't get to everybody, but maybe next time. Okay, thank you very much.